Welcome to the Online Business Launchpad podcast. I'm your host, Trudy Rankin. And today I have as guest, MV Braverman. And MV has been around before, and we've done a couple of, or at least one workshop together where we did a joint workshop. And reason I asked MV to be on the podcast today is that recently I have been banging my head against the wall trying to figure out how to automate some of the tasks that I have to do that just take a ton of my time. And MV runs a business called Your Tech Maven, and she knows a lot about how to use technology to be able to do exactly that, how to save time. And so I asked her if she would come on today and specifically talk about time-saving things you can do, but specifically around a tool called Zapier. Now, I always used to call this thing Zapier because it rhymes with rapier, but it's apparently pronounced Zapier because it rhymes with happier, and they use it to create zaps. And zaps are little tiny bits of pre-coded things that you don't have to worry about, the pre-coding side of things, but little tiny things that you can use to help automate parts of processes, and it can just end up saving you a truckload of time. So MV, welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to have you here.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Trudy.
So MV, we did a bit of talking before we jumped on started to record, and we talked about some of the different ways that you can use Zaps to set up automated processes and save yourself time. And I was wondering if you could just share some of those with us. Now, you obviously do this for your clients. You set up a number for your clients, but I'm specifically wanting to focus on zaps that can be set up that are one-step zaps. So you can set up really complicated zaps that have multiple steps, but you have to pay for those. If you want to have lots of steps, you have to have a paid account. Whereas if you have a one-step zap with Zapier, it can be free, and you can keep it free for as long as you like. I think there's a limit to the number of zaps you can have, but
yeah, there's 5.
There's 5. But it's just useful to know that if you start out by doing one-step zaps and learn how to do it and how to use it and how much time it can save, then once you're ready to move to a paid account, those zaps that you set up are going to actually pay for themselves because they're going to save you a lot of time you can use somewhere else. So can you just share with us just your list of ideas for things you can do with zaps?
Oh my goodness, there are so many. And interestingly enough, you asked for one-step zaps, and there's actually different ways to do things sometimes, which I'm used to setting up these complex zaps, and so that's where my default goes. So one time I was trying to connect Bucket, which is my quiz software, with another platform that I was trying for my emails and websites, and it just wasn't working. Their support was terrible. They were just not helping me because I wanted to do a filter and do it all in one zap. And I met someone recently who uses the same exact combination, and I asked her, how did you do it? It was so frustrating. And she said, I just set up 5 separate one-step zaps. So instead of me thinking of this beautiful, flowing, complex zap, it would have been a 2-step zap with filters. I could have set up 5 one-step zaps. So there's always going to be, or at the very least, there's often going to be several ways you can do things in Zapier and in life. But getting back to your question, I don't really like to do things repeatedly, so I love automating things. And the zaps I use, so one is when I start an email in Gmail, if something comes in that I need to handle, I start it and it gets zapped to my project management software, which is called Jira. And it can work with pretty much any project management. If a new subscriber subscribes to my weekly newsletter, you should sign up, then they also get added to my other email platform, and they're also saved to Airtable so that I always have a backup of my email list.
You want to just talk about this a little bit more? That whole concept of making sure you have a backup of who's on your email list.
Now, one thing we say is email lists are fabulous because you own them. Facebook cannot take them away. Instagram cannot take them away. If a social media platform implodes, people's business can be gone. But if your business is based in your email list, it's never going to be gone. but things happen. So it's always a good idea to have backup just in case. If ActiveCampaign goes out of business tomorrow, I will not be out of business. I have a backup of my email list. I can upload it to a new service, or if the prices get out of hand and I want to switch, I just upload my email list and I'm 90% ready to go.
So you use Airtable, but you could also use Google Sheets or
Google Sheets,
or whatever, and just keep that list of, and it's always going to be fresh and up to date. You don't have to remember to go in every week and do a download of your CSV file download of all of your list members, because it's being done automatically while you sleep, which is brilliant.
Yeah, and it's kept up to date. So I have a Zap for subscribes as well as Zap for unsubscribes.
Okay, cool. That's really cool. I think I'm going to set something. I do not have that set up, and that's something I think I need to set up. Okay, what would be another thing?
Highly recommended. One thing that is not as much of an issue now, although it still could be useful, is when Zoom had a really small amount of space that you could have for your cloud recordings, I would zap the recordings. So as soon as the recording finished, it triggered a zap to send the recording over to YouTube as an unlisted video, or to Vimeo, which is another video platform that I use. And then I would have a copy of it and could just go and delete the Zoom recordings. And this can also be very handy if you have a course, especially a live course, then you're not going to need to manually download, both for bandwidth and space issues. That can be a pain. They just get automatically sent over. And so for one of my clients, I do a double backup. We save both to YouTube and to Google Drive.
And that's brilliant. And I think that, especially for me, that's one of the other things that I'm going to go away and do after we finish talking on this interview, is that for me, I have to manually go in. At the moment, I'm manually going into Zoom, downloading the recording to my computer, and then uploading it to Google Drive. And I could cut out a whole step just by automating that step. And so as soon as we finished recording this and it finishes processing, boom, it can go straight into the folder that I want it to go into, which is brilliant. That is really brilliant.
And with Google Drive, it's pretty much instantaneous. With YouTube, it's going to take a while just for it to process, as with any video. But with Google Drive, it just snap and it's there. It's pretty fantastic.
That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. Okay, and then another one.
Ooh. I'm drawing a blank here. Help me out, Trudy.
Calendaring.
Cool ideas that came up. Oh, that's right. An inexpensive way, if you don't want to pay for, let's say, Calendly or another tool, you can set up notifications or reminders for people and for yourself to show up on the call. Calendly does have really good reminders, but sometimes you want that little extra.
Well, and if you're also on a shoestring budget or no budget, and you're basically bootstrapping yourself for your new startup, and you're trying to save money in any way, shape, form that you can, for a while, having a free Zapier account and just basically using your own calendar system without Calendly or Acuity scheduling or any of the calendaring systems, you can save a little bit of money for that. It might take you a little bit more to get it set up and do what you want, but temporarily it can be a bridge while you're starting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it can be very helpful, especially if if you're talking to someone and you schedule right then and there, you can set it up. So if it has a certain name, then it sends them a reminder.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. So I'm just thinking out loud now, because we've been through a few things. We talked about sending videos from Zoom straight through to some hosting platform, whether it's YouTube or Vimeo or Google Drive. We've talked about,
or even your course platform, possibly.
Oh, that's true. You could send it to a course platform. Yeah, wherever you want to send it, pretty much, as long as it's a software as a service type thing. And then we talked a little bit about notifications, being notified whether somebody's subscribed or unsubscribed. And we also, when we were talking about that, you also talked in terms of notifications, you're talking about a way of deciding when you might want to use a Zap. And you talked about the CSVs. And maybe just explain what a CSV is and how you might be able to just use that as a trigger to go, hey, I should set up a Zap.
And I remembered, so first I remembered another example that we used, which I think is really important, which is as an error backstop. So if a customer enters in their email incorrectly, paying for your course or your membership or your product, and they never receive that email, you want to have a Zap set up, because a lot of email service platforms don't actually have that. They won't tell you if something went wrong. But it's important for you to know something went wrong, someone didn't get like their confirmation email bounced. Follow up with them ASAP, because that's a great way to save yourself from a lot of headaches and chargebacks. I've typoed stuff, embarrassingly enough, even though I have autofills all over the place. And the same way is if you have a subscription service like membership and someone pays through PayPal, they can cancel it and you won't know.
And that
So
is
you want to know.
Yeah, because it is such a bummer. Suddenly discovering, 3 weeks later that the money that you thought was supposed to be coming in hasn't come in, and you're going, why is my revenue a little bit low this month? Yeah, that's really important. And then, so notifications are a really, really great place to be thinking about how you could be notified about things. You can use those notifications as a way of creating backups for you so that you've got that data that you need for later. It can help you set up reminders in terms of things that you need to do. And then basically there was, as we just mentioned, just that
if something goes wrong.
So if something goes wrong,
it's
as
really
a backstop,
important to know.
if something goes wrong. So I think those are really useful tips for being able to set things up that are going to save people time. Now, if you're somebody who, if you're listening and you're going, okay, that sounds really interesting, I'm interested in this, but I've never used Zapier before and I don't really feel that confident with technology. Can you just walk people through the steps they might take to be able to just to get started doing their first one-step Zap?
Absolutely. So if you go to Zapier.com, they make it really easy. At least they make it look really easy. Sometimes it takes a while to get a Zap working, but for the most part, it's pretty smooth experience. And if you're just not sure of what you want to connect, see what the popular Zaps they show on their front page are and see, okay, that sounds interesting. I want to try that. Sign up for a free account and you can just copy it and set it up. You'll have to connect your own accounts. So, if it's Google Sheets, you have to connect to your Google Workspace or Gmail account. But other than that, it's pretty smooth, especially for one-step stuff. And one thing I like to say is once you get it going, 98% of the time, it goes in just fine. 1% of the time, you get some sort of an error, like your accounts get disconnected or something like that. And 1% of the time, you just go, what just happened? So it either fires twice or it doesn't fire at all. So it's really important is have some sort of an audit process. Just compare numbers. If you have 115 subscribers in your email service and you have 114 in your Google Sheets, once you've set up the Zap, then you'd be like, there's a mismatch there. I wonder what happened. And then you have to fix it. But most of the time, it's really smooth. And especially the single step ones, they make it really easy for you to set one up.
Yeah. So maybe just explain a little bit about the whole concept of a trigger, because a trigger is probably the first step that you have to do as part of setting up a Zap.
So trigger is something happened. So it could be a new Zoom recording just appeared in your Zoom account, or a new email got a star. Or you could also have a date-based trigger. So every Friday at 2 p.m. But most triggers are something happened. Someone subscribed, someone unsubscribed, there's a new recording, something happened. So it's a if this, then that, which is a competing service, but it's still a great name. So if someone subscribes, then add them to the Google Sheet.
Yeah. And so my next question is, well, actually, I'll just back up just a little bit. As you said, MV, it can, when you get started, it's on the face of it, it's fairly simple. Just know that they have done their absolute best to make it a step-by-step process, and they walk you through it. They have a lot of explanations about what things are and what they mean. And so the best thing that I've discovered is that if you sit down before you get onto Zapier or Zapier and use a piece of paper and a pen and write down what it is, what that triggering step is. So when this happens, then I want that to happen. And if you do that and you've thought through that little process before you get onto it, it's going to be a lot easier. And then the other thing you mentioned too was the connection side of things. You do have to connect Zapier up to your accounts like Google Drive or your email service provider. And so there's a process that you go through when you start to set up the Zap. That's part of the trigger process typically, where they walk you step by step how to do that. And they make it super, super simple. So all you need to know to be able to do that part of it is just your username and password so that you can log in when they ask you to log in, and it's all automated. You don't have to jump from one to the other or anything like that. It all happens really beautifully and automated. So that's really helpful. Quick question for you, a curiosity question, and that is that what is your favorite Zap that you use in your business?
Oh, my goodness. I have so many. A lot of them work behind the scenes, just my email subscribers. Since I send a weekly newsletter, part of my newsletter is curated resources from around the web, things that I find interesting, things that I think would be very useful to small business owners. So I have a Zap set up that sends a specific article directly to the platform that I use to curate that newsletter. And also, I am an information collector, and it is embarrassing. I stopped using Evernote, but I would just dump everything in there. And now I have an easy way to save things and not have them be going into the compost bin, as we say.
How do you actually do that? Like, how is that set up?
I use a service called Readwise, which collects my Kindle highlights and other things. And they now have a newer add-on called Reader, which is intended for emails and everything around the web. So now I have everything going into one place. And it's pretty easy to do that.
And you're using a Zap.
It's still a work in progress. Some of it is a direct thing, but some of it I do have to use a Zap for. Honestly, it's a work in progress, but I really like the idea of lots of different sources, but going to the same place. And usually I love having direct integrations. So if software talks directly to another software, that's fantastic. Honestly, that's ideal. A, for price reasons, and B, just with Zapier as the middle. And like I said, 2% of the time something goes wrong. It just does. And that's a lot less common with a direct integration. But I don't want not having a direct integration to stop me. If there's one piece that needs that Zap, I'm very happy to have Zapier on my side.
Yeah, for sure. So one last curiosity question before we wrap up for today is, have you thought about, or have you actually tried combining a Zap with using ChatGPT?
I haven't yet. But
could you think of a use case?
Give me an example.
I don't know. I was just thinking, because I've been reading a lot of articles about how you can use ChatGPT and how you can use your prompts and things like that to help you getting like a first draft of something that you then turn into something lovely, because you need the human touch. But I'm just thinking, could you, like for me, the most brilliant thing would be is if I was able to send, once I created a transcript into Script, which I use Descript to do all my podcast editing. Once I finished a transcript in there, I could send it to ChatGPT with some specific standard prompts that would then do my show notes, turn it into a draft blog post, and the highlights and whatever I've highlighted would, I do those separately in terms of social media. But if there was some way to do the, hey, ChatGPT, I finished my transcript, take that and use these prompts and give me my show notes, that even just that would save me a lot of time.
I think I am is it's a little embarrassing, but I am still very dubious of ChatGPT. It lies with no shame. It changes things. And so I think it's an interesting idea to explore, but I would strongly recommend that don't make it live. You want that human eye,
Oh,
just to make sure that it corresponds to.
Yeah, you never cut and paste with ChatGPT because yes, it hallucinates. I think there's the technical term hallucinations. Yeah, I've used it to try and do some research before. And when I went and investigated the sources that it cited, the sources were there, the sources were there, but they did not say what ChatGPT said they said.
Oh, wow.
Which is not okay, especially if you've got a science background. Like I did a bit of science at university, and this is no, that's not okay. No, but for me, it's more about getting a first draft. So you're not looking at a blank sheet of paper and you're going, hey, you could do it like this. And for me, you can tell if something's just been cut and pasted from ChatGPT. It's not nice. It feels like a robot. And I don't like that, but I really like the value it brings in terms of giving you something to start from. It gives you a starting point, and you use your brain and your experience.
Completely agree.
Yeah. To then turn
it
it
is as my kids would say, it is mid. It's like it just sounds like a corporate drone wrote it sometimes.
Exactly. Okay, Envy.
I'm not ready to explore that yet, but I think that is an awesome idea, and I can't wait to hear about how you use it.
How I use it will be interesting to see if it would work. Yeah. So in terms of, so you've mentioned a couple of things. First of all, you talked about your newsletter, and we've talked about your business, Your Tech Maven. And also you mentioned something that you're working on that's coming. If people, you want to talk about that just for 2 seconds, and then we can wrap up.
I have been bitten by the course bug, and I love live cohort courses, and especially with tech, you can't have pre-recorded stuff. So I am building a live cohort course it's titled Automate Without Losing Your Personal Touch. Because I think there is a lot of times people don't want to automate because they're nervous that it will lose them that really personal connection. But I think there's a robust case for if you use automation, that'll actually free you up and make your service better.
Yeah.
In many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes it possible to add more of a personal touch, to be honest, especially if you combine it with a quiz.
That's a whole different topic of conversation that always happy to talk about.
Which we've chatted about on this podcast before. Yeah, for sure. Okay, that's cool. So we'll put links up in the show notes to those things so that if people are interested in signing up for the wait list, then they can do that and just signify their interest in that. Other than that, do you want to just share the best places for people to get in touch with you if they're interested in having a chat?
My website is the best place, and I'm also on Facebook quite a bit, maybe too much. And you can find me on LinkedIn. I post a published version of my newsletter as well on LinkedIn.
Okay, so cool.
I'm exploring using both, and thank you for getting me back on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's a good place to be. So it's MV Braverman on LinkedIn or yourtechmaven.com for your website. That's correct?
Yep, that is correct.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you.